moving ahead, let's just go ahead and start the meeting. It looks to me from the agenda as if the first effort precedes public comment. Am I reading the agenda correctly, Director Gates?
We'll need to approve we'll need to do roll call and then
There
approve
we
the
are.
agenda.
And then we proceed with the agenda as laid out.
Yes.
Got it. So the first issue for the team this evening would be to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. I would solicit a motion to that effect if anyone
I move
chooses. There we go.
Move to approve the agenda.
I second.
I have a movement, a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of this motion? Hearing none, seeing none, I would call for a roll call vote on said motion. Natalie?
Commissioner Fogelberg? Commissioner Ward?
Aye.
Commissioner Nathan?
Aye.
Vice Chair Conlon?
Yes.
Chair Morell?
Aye.
Thank you, and I would like to point out that Elena Castro, our youth member, and Leo McCloskey and Philip HINERMAN are all absent as of right now from this evening's meeting.
Thank you, but we do have a sufficient quorum to proceed with the public meeting, I believe. Thank you. We missed them, and we hope that they're well in today's challenges. So the first order of business this evening on the agenda, and I'll put reading glasses on to read properly, is the Climate Action Commission this evening's selection of chair and vice chair for the year 2025. So I would call for nominations for the 2025 chair of the Climate Action Commission.
You can renominate the existing chair.
What's the term limit?
There is no term.
There is.
It tends to be an annual.
We will annually call for an election of a chair and a vice chair, and then you as a commission can determine whether or not you want to rotate, or if the chair doesn't want to be acting as chair anymore, they can step down and ask that you guys vote for somebody else. You know, there's all kinds of options.
Could we name could we move and ultimately vote to name someone in abstention?
You know, I think you were listening to our Commissioner Fogelberg a second ago. I'd rather not, just in case they're not interested. We can also hold this to the next meeting, by the way. if you
Commissioner
don't feel
Ward, did you
comfortable.
have
I mean, I think
comment?
as long as our chair and vice chair are comfortable with it, you two have done good work and really built the connections. So if the two of you are still okay being chair and co-chair or vice chair, I'm happy with
Thank
that.
you. I think we're, according to the agenda of the public meeting, we're going to proceed first with the chair and then with the vice chair. But
Perfect.
your comments are well taken. Thank you.
I would second
I am making a motion.
Commissioner Ward's comments.
So is there a motion from Commissioner Ward?
I motion for Chair David Morell to continue to be Chair Morell.
I second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there a discussion?
We have to do
Natalie?
public comment first.
Public comment on the motion as presented and seconded. Michael? You don't want to join the commission? Come on.
Not as chair.
Seeing no public comment, we'll move on to the next step. Natalie, is that then a vote on the motion? So we'll do a roll call vote on the motion as presented by Commissioner Ward.
Commissioner Fogelberg, excuse me.
Aye.
Commissioner Nathan?
Aye.
Commissioner Ward?
Aye.
Vice Chair Conlon?
Yes.
And Chair Morell?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, team. Well, this could be the year of climate, certainly needed, given the national and global news about numbers only going up and so on. The next step is a similar process with respect to calling for nominations for our vice chair for the year 2025. I would solicit one or more nominations.
I would like to suggest that Commissioner Conlon, be reappointed for next year, if he is willing.
Thank you. Is there a second to Commissioner Fogelberg's motion? There is a motion and a second. It's again now public comment, should there be any, and then the vote, if I'm a quick learner on occasion. Is there any public comment on the vice chair motion? Seeing none, or a roll call vote on said motion. Natalie?
Commissioner Fogelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Nathan,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward,
Aye.
Vice Chair Conlon,
I will say aye as well.
Chair Morell.
And aye, unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've done that. We now have potentially comments from the public. I guess I'm supposed to read the entire paragraph. We don't have to. If anybody wants the paragraph read about the rules or comments of the public, I will read it. Seeing none, we'll move on to see, are there any comments from the public this evening on items not on the official agenda, is the summary of the paragraph. And yes, sir. Would you please come up to the podium and introduce yourself and join us? Thank you.
I'm basically a little scared to start talking and using my time because I don't know what's on the agenda and what's not. I tried to look it up online and I got some semblance of it, but
Well,
I
if
haven't
you-
mastered my phone yet.
Let's proceed, and if it turns out to be a problem, we'll regroup and have you comment on the agenda items as they emerge. Would you
Okay.
please introduce yourself to the commission and to the hundreds who are watching on television?
Armando Zimmerman. I live at 275 West Spain Street. Okay, I'd like to start with, Chairperson kind of brought it up. On a macro, and I'm looking at it as a wholly macro level at the national level with the craziness that, this is my own opinion, obviously. Declarations, et cetera, et cetera. I would just like to know if, maybe not have an answer tonight, but will there be a meeting that might talk about the repercussions at our level here regarding just what might be the, turmoil at the EPA, and, every day there's a new edict and so forth. So I'm really concerned about that. Secondly, regarding trees, it's not that I know too much, but there's so much concentration about trees, which I'm not against, and shaded areas and how they help the environment. On the other hand, I don't hear a lot of the detail or maybe the minutia about trees require a lot of water, some of them, some less. They require pruning, they require, some are deciduous, some aren't, et cetera, et cetera. And when I walk around, bike around, and I do that every day, I see, even in my own yard, I'm not doing the best that I can do. So anyway, I'd like to hear more detailed information. I know it seems like we're getting some expert help, and we won't plant any more liquid ambers, maybe. I don't know. Thirdly, I guess, I'm concerned about the circulation element, the noise element. I'm not sure the environmental element, the greenhouse gases, etc. I'm dubious that I don't even know what our goals really are, and that's my own fault. But I'm dubious, just judging from my own neighborhood. My neighborhood, West Main Street, we've got a group for three years approaching the Traffic Safety Committee about a lot of things, safety and whatever, but also those are intertwined with calming and noise and tailpipe emissions. I just don't understand the goals in relation to that, and I haven't heard much about it. A while back, I asked a question about where some of the information is coming to the city regarding the structuring the goal review, or the, how do you call it, the update on the city plan. And I kept seeing some things that talk about street light, and I look at these street light comments, and it seems to be things we already know. So I don't know if we're paying for information that we're already aware of. And anyway, I'm sorry to sound like a downer on this, but it's, you know, if I'm way out of line, maybe I can be straightened out. Let's put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Comments are never out of line. They're important to put these issues before this commission and the broader public. As a former official of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, on your first point, I'm deeply saddened by what's happening. I'm an active member of the EPA Alumni Association. We've crafted a letter to all EPA employees recently offering to help in any way we alumni can, and so on. It's a big challenge at the national level, and it's having impact here locally already. I would simply share that a major and very, very important project funded by the U.S. EPA at La Luz, managed by the Ecology Center of Sonoma, has been frozen. It's a very powerful project to train people in the workforce to do forest-related work, and so that's the kind of thing that's being cut, when heavens knows we need forest-trained work by people who know how to do it. Trees certainly need water. Our arborists are quite aware of that. Do they do it always right? Probably not. Do we encourage them to do it right and better? Yes, we do. And trees are an important topic overall. The goal process is underway, as far as I know, at the city, and later this evening, Director Gates may have more to say about an update on where the city is with the important follow-on to the big meeting we had recently on city goals. And with respect to the steps being taken, this commission has come up with a set of strategies. They're available for your review. We've done more on writing strategies than we have on acting on them at this point. We're called a Climate Action Commission, and I try to focus on that central word. And yes, it's desperately needed. The climate issues become only worse by the day and by the hour. But thank you for your comments. Are there any other reactions from the commissioners before we move on to the regular agenda? Seeing none, thanks for your comments, and we will move on now. Closing comments from the public. And we now have a consent calendar item, the minutes of the commission meeting of last November 13th of 2024. Are there any comments from commissioners on the minutes as presented?
I had one little comment that made me kind of chuckle.
Yes,
Not really a
please.
big deal. It's under the items for discussion under our education and outreach portion. The last line says, Commissioner Ward gave an update on working with schools to create waste and recycling. Just programs, not waste. I don't want to create more waste.
Thank you, and could we amend the minutes to provide proper verbiage in there? And thank you, Amber. Any other comments or corrections to the minutes as wastefully presented? Seeing none, I would solicit a motion.
I'll move to adopt the minutes as drafted with
Thank
that
you.
correction.
Thank you, Vice Chair Conlon. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. We have a motion and second. Is there discussion of the motion other than the comments already presented? Seeing none, I would proceed to a roll call vote. Natalie, please.
Commissioner Fogelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Nathan,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward,
Aye.
Vice Chair Conlon,
Aye.
Chair Morell.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Red light. So now we're going to move to the items for discussion this evening. Several are very interesting. With respect to Sonoma Clean Power, we welcome a presentation. If you'd proceed with introducing yourself on behalf of Sonoma Clean Power, Sarah, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me. My name's Leif Christensen. I'm a commercial account manager with Sonoma Clean Power. This evening, I'm going to be going over a brief presentation, providing an overview of Sonoma Clean Power, and also discussing some details about Evergreen, our 100% renewable offering. And then, of course, we'll open it up to questions. So, in terms of, do I have the clicker here? Okay, great. All right. So, Sonoma Clean Power is a public agency. We provide power to our customers around Sonoma and Mendocino counties. We are a joint powers authority that was formed in 2014. And we are funded through selling electricity to our customers. We, unlike PG&E, we do not have shareholders, so our excess revenues are reinvested into our community, into programs to help customers, and to keep bills as low as possible. We serve about 80% of PG&E customers are also Sonoma Clean Power customers, and we have been in existence since 2014. We were the second community choice aggregator, also known as CCAs. The first CCA was in Marin, that was now known as MCE, but we followed closely behind them. And I should note, we are overseen by a board of directors who are represented by who represent the cities and counties throughout Sonoma and Mendocino County. So Mayor Rivas is on our board. We also have a community advisory committee, and we have a member in the audience here who's part of that. So we being a public agency, we get a lot of oversight and input from the community, and really keeps us focused. So in terms of how this process works, we procure power on behalf of our customers around California, and then we work with PG&E to have that power delivered to our customers using the grid. So Sonoma Clean Power customers are also PG&E customers. They receive a charge from us for generation and a charge from PG&E for the delivery portion. PG&E also handles the billing, and we and Sonoma Clean Power customers, in addition to having access to our programs, they also have access to PG&E programs. And then the customers win because, for one reason, they have a choice. Before we existed, PG&E was the only choice in town. We gave them a choice of who they get their power from. And we do our best to earn that choice. So in 2014, we rolled out across Sonoma County, and then in 2017, expanded to Mendocino. The only two cities that are not part of Sonoma Clean Power are Healdsburg and Ukiah, since they are their own utility. In terms of our priorities, helping customers keep their bills as low as possible is a major priority for us. We do that by having competitive rates relative to PG&E. Currently, Sonoma Clean Power customers pay between 5% and 7% less on their total bill compared to customers who are just with PG&E. And we've been able to do that by being very strategic in the power we purchase, and making sure that we reinvest the excess revenues we generate in any one year into stabilizing rates, and also providing programs that help customers reduce their usage. A big part of my job as a commercial account manager is to make sure customers are on the best rate for them through a rate analysis, and also encouraging them to participate in energy efficiency programs, either programs offered by Sonoma Clean Power or by PG&E. But energy efficiency is sometimes the most cost-effective way to reduce your energy bill by less usage. So besides being an advocate for our customers through lower rates and providing renewable energy, we also focus on advocating for our customers in Sacramento with the state legislature, but also with the California Public Utility Commission, California Energy Commission. We're very active throughout with those kind of larger policy issues, and also partnering with our other CCAs. There are 24 CCAs throughout California, and we are work together to find solutions. And lastly, we are very focused on innovation and filling gaps in the marketplace when it comes to energy efficiency and electrification. And we're able to leverage the resources that we have from selling power and bringing those solutions to our customers. So a big part of our excuse me, our focus is renewable energy. And most of our customers, our default offering for our customers is called Clean Start. So it's 51% renewable, 88% carbon free. It's it's, as I mentioned before, 5 to 7% less than PG&E on total bill. So that's on the total bill. If you just look at the generation portion, we're about 20% less than PG&E's generation. And this is a very, very popular offering. It's our default service. The Evergreen is our second offering. This is a premium service. It's 100% renewable. It's all local power, and it's 24/7. So one of the challenges with renewable energy, as you know, is during the day when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing, renewable energy is plentiful. But as the day goes on, the sun sets, night comes, and the wind dies down, there's not a lot of renewable energy left. Maybe you can save some in some batteries, but there's not a lot there. So when Evergreen was designed, the idea was to provide our customers renewable energy 24/7, 365 days a year. And when we launched, it was one of the first of these products nationwide. It really set the stage for a high bar for renewable energy, and it really provided a proof of concept. This hadn't been done before. Weren't sure it was possible. It was made possible partly because of the geothermal resources in our region. 88% comes from the geysers of our power. The remaining portion is from solar arrays in the region that we've developed. And this is a premium service, though. It's 2.5 cents per kWh, and it is about half the carbon footprint of Clean Start in terms of how we report our carbon. So as you may know, the City of Sonoma is an Evergreen customer. They joined in May of 2017, and they were actually the first city or county in Sonoma and Mendocino counties who joined Evergreen for all of their facilities. So all facilities and infrastructure are served by Evergreen in the City of Sonoma. And based on City of Sonoma's usage, which is a little over 500,000 kWh each year, there is an annual Evergreen premium of about $13,000 associated with that. So I wanted to talk a little more about where the power comes from for Evergreen. As I mentioned, it's all local. So the geysers is one of the largest collection of geothermal plants in the world. It is there's still huge potential there, and Sonoma Clean Power has initiated what's called the GeoZone, which is an effort to expand and increase the amount of geothermal power that we're able to pull from the region around the geysers, given the importance of geothermal and how it's evolved as an offering to be more efficient in terms of use of water and fewer environmental impacts. The local solar projects that we have that are feeding into Evergreen are smaller in size. They're 1 megawatt projects. We have 6 of them. And Sonoma Clean Power has partnered with landowners who lease the land to us and solar developers who actually develop the project to bring these projects into fruition. These are a direct result of the support for Evergreen. And the more entities, more customers we have with Evergreen, the stronger case we have to develop further local power resources. The other I should note that our CEO, Jeff Cyphers, was invited tonight to attend. He is home with the flu. So, however, in preparing for this evening, one thing that he really wanted to emphasize is that, based on kind of this formal presentation, there's some great benefits to Evergreen. But from his perspective, one of the biggest benefits of Evergreen really has to do with the larger impact that it has. For one, as I mentioned, it's a proof of concept. So other CCAs are now using it as a model for how they can present or bring a 100% renewable product to their customers, which is very challenging. And it's also for the state of California to think about renewable power and particularly how it's reported. So there is kind of the thing that is not appreciated is that a lot of utilities who are saying they have very high renewable power content are discounting the impact of using natural gas at night. It's just it's a relic from how the state records and reports carbon impacts, and partly as a result of Evergreen, the state has passed legislation that by 2028, all utilities will have to report the true carbon impacts, including the natural gas they use at night and in the winter. So that will kind of put everything on an even playing field. But really, that's to say is Evergreen is one of the best carbon options, and although it's half the carbon footprint of Clean Start, I would say it's even better than we actually are reporting it. So that concludes my formal comments for tonight, and I want to open up for questions.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. Much appreciated. I know, and I would introduce Commissioner McCloskey to the group. Thank you for coming in. I would suggest questions. Tom, did you want to start?
Sure, I'll
I've
start.
got a number, but I want to wait and let my colleagues kind of get it started.
So Lee, thanks for coming down here tonight and talking to us. I really appreciate you being here and being responsive to our questions about the Evergreen program in particular. As you probably know, Sonoma, as you said, was the first city to adopt the Evergreen as a municipality. And really the questions that we've been framing here are in the context of if we are a budget constrained, we're in a budget constrained environment right now. We just raised taxes on our city sales tax payers, and we have no official allocation of budget yet to this commission. And so we are, as you noted, we're spending about at least $13,000 a year currently on this program. We're trying to understand how much that value is coming back directly to us. You stated that the carbon footprint is about half. Do you know what the remaining carbon footprint of the solar and geyser power is? Is there other fossil usage associated with the geyser plant or with the solar plants?
So my understanding is that the carbon that we report on Evergreen is related to the geothermal plant. When you drill into the ground, it's possible that you release some gases that may be there. That's not to say that's specifically happening at the geysers. The carbon allocation here is an estimate across geothermal in general, and it is it doesn't necessarily represent exactly the impact at that particular site, but it is what is officially reported. It's possible that's even lower than what is presented there.
Very well. So when we looked at the efficiency or the energy factors for the two resource offerings, and I think I did this for the city of Sebastopol because they had raised some similar questions over there because they're in even more dire budget straits than we are. I calculated it was about $1,200 a ton for the value of the carbon that was being offset by the evergreen purchase, which is quite a large number. And that was based on their 2.5-cent premium, same as ours, but their power bill was apparently higher than ours, because I think we calculated higher than $13,000 in Sebastopol. So they've decided, I understand that they've decided not to challenge the evergreen payment there, because they're afraid that if the money were to come back to the city, it would just be absorbed into the budget and not go to another climate line item. While we might have the option to do that here, is to redirect the 13,000 to something else that might be more immediately of benefit to our local residents and visitors. So, do you have any sense of, I mean, obviously the Evergreen's a great pilot program for the state and demonstrates leadership of our CCA relative to others in the state. We have nothing against that. We just want to be sure that we've done our due diligence here to make sure we understand what we're getting for that extra cost each year. And so if there's, and then the other question is, you're a commercial accounts rep, do you have other, do you give your Evergreen customers anything extra in terms of support or services, or is it the same service we would get if we were on Clean Start?
So the simple answer to, is there anything different for Evergreen customers that Clean Start customers get? The answer would be no. We treat our customers all the same. However, we have done, made a particular effort to highlight Evergreen customers given the leadership they're providing. And typically they tend to be innovative customers who are looking at the cutting edge. They have a very diverse, sophisticated climate strategy, and typically are interested in engaging other elements of what we're doing. So I would say they're the most engaged just by the nature of who they are. And that just opens up various opportunities. So formally, we were not doing anything different with them, but the engagement is much higher with Evergreen customers.
Right, so promotional benefits for commercial, for-profit companies generally, or do you also do that for your municipal Evergreen customers?
Yeah, it's also municipal. So an example would be one of our, actually up in Mendocino, we started what's called Climate Corners. It's an initiative in libraries where we helped expand their inventory, their catalog of climate literature, and then created a space within each library, each branch up there, to highlight that catalog and also bring other resources. So we have like a do-it-yourself toolkit that patrons can check out and bring home and make their home more energy efficient. So a small example, but we started that with an Evergreen customer. We did Mendocino County-wide. We are now going to be rolling that out in Sonoma County. And actually Mayor Rivas was a big driver for that, because she at a board meeting, she heard, hey, well, let's do this in Sonoma. This would be great. So we are, this year we'll be rolling that out. We're actually aiming for Earth Day as a launch for the Climate Corner, and one is slated for here in the branch here in the city of Sonoma. So that would just be an example of something that kind of almost grew out organically out of an interest in doing more than just, you know, being an Evergreen customer.
Cedra, go at it.
Thank you for coming tonight. That's an interesting presentation. You said one thing that I was wondering if you had any more information about. It was about the more customers with Evergreen, the better case there is for solar installations. And I was wondering if you had any projections about like an economic break even, like how many more customers would it be for solar installations to make the price per customer for that premium to actually come down so that there's no longer a premium? How many more customers do you need for that to happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have a specific answer to that. One thing I should note is that as a result of this kind of increased interest in Sonoma Clean Power of creating local generation, we've created a capital projects division It just started this year. And our longer term goal as a strategy for keeping costs down, kind of to your point of getting more of a critical mass, is to own our own generation and to do it locally. So far, we are only procuring power, and we help local projects get developed, but moving forward, we actually want to own those projects. Now that feeds into Evergreen, but it also helps Clean Start customers. Doing 100% renewable is extremely challenging, and that increased cost will come down as economies of scale occur, but I don't have any long-term projections. I also note that the geothermal project, geothermal zone that I described of expanding the geysers capacity is a very long-term project. Once that eventually comes online, that will increase our ability to bring down the cost of Evergreen.
You anticipated where I was going to go next, which is what about projections, and do you have any timeline in terms of additional customers or additional expansion or capacity that would change that 2.5%, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I'll have to go back and check on that. There has been no discussion about changing the cost of that. It's actually stayed pretty flat for as long as I've known, about 2.5 cents. But the stability, I think, it makes it easier for people to sign up. If it was fluctuating based on the cost of energy.
Well, up, yes, but down.
Yeah,
is what
right.
We're interested in.
Oh, absolutely. But as you know, the cost of energy has been increasing quite a bit over the last few years. So it's stayed flat, which has been a challenge in itself.
Thank you. Other comments from commissioners? Questions, comments? McCloskey?
Yes, thank you. Leo McCloskey. I have just one question as they're squeezing gas out. Do you have any idea what you're going to recommend for hot water heaters? You know, there's sort of the off-the-shelf Ream and these companies. And then there are these CO2-based Sanco heat pumps. I'm just wondering what are the opportunities for finding out more about what really works in what areas? Where are you having, problems like with hot water generation using electricity?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Before I fully answer it, part of the answer is to encourage you to visit Clean Power's Customer Center in downtown Santa Rosa. It was designed to help answer exactly the question that you're raising with our customers. Heat pump technology is the biggest driver in terms of electrifying homes and businesses and be able to provide hot water and the HVAC needs in a way that's cost effective and efficient. Heat pump technology is extremely more efficient than electric resistance. Related to gas, switching from gas, which I think is really your question, to electric heat pumps does have some added cost, and it's really case by case. If it requires an upgrade to their electrical system to serve that heat pump, that can increase the cost. And the cost of electricity increasing makes it not pencil out as well as maybe used to. It's still, in many applications, a great strategy, and we have incentives to support the installation of heat pumps. But to learn more about heat pumps and other kind of electrification strategies, the Customer Center is a great resource.
I pick up that it could be more expensive for somebody to get a heat pump than to stay with gas.
It depends. So there are scenarios where it could be.
Give me one where it could be.
So, yeah, sure, if you want to.
Sure, jump in. I want to jump in what you said too, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
My name is Michael Hefler. We haven't met. Oh, you want me to stand up?
As a member of our Community Advisory Committee, we'll consider this a joint
press.
A joint Clean Power presentation.
So, my name is Michael Hefler. I live down the street here at 293 First Street West. And
Thank you, Michael.
My pleasure, David. And I've done a number of things to try to get to my house to be all electric, because where we lived in New Jersey, we actually fought a natural gas pipeline, and it went to the Supreme Court, and we won. So I've been very much wanting to do that. But when we moved into the house, we moved in at the end of 2020. In 2019, they put in a new gas water heater. And now I've got a heat pump. We got rid of the furnace and the air conditioner, so I got a heat pump. We got rid of the gas stove. We got an induction stove. Got rid of the gas dryer. Got an electric dryer. And I was willing to make all those investments because I did the math, and over time they all made sense over time. And fortunately, I was in a position where I could afford to do that. But when I looked at the water heater, it didn't make sense for two reasons. And I want to get rid of all the gas. That's the only gas in my house right now. To just take that water heater out costs several $1,000s. And then to put a new one in is also several $1,000s, and my water heater works really, really well. So that didn't make sense, but the math was pretty straightforward. If my water heater was toward an end of life, it would have been a different kind of an issue, but this is brand new. So there's a number of different variables for you, if that is helpful.
Will you both agree it's the capitalization, like buying a new one?
Getting rid of the old one and buying a new one, both. Yeah, there's costs on both ends of that.
I'll give an example maybe where it makes the most sense. So,
Sure.
so
At the microphone
yeah,
works.
let me give an
Thank you
example
very
where
much, Leif.
it makes the most sense. For example, if you have an electric resistant hot water heater currently, which is highly inefficient, and you're ready, and it's going out, it's about to die, or it's died, it's done, it has to be replaced, and so we can have hot water in the house. That would be a great example where a heat pump hot water heater, you could just plug right in there. You already have electrical power ready to go. You need to replace it because your old one is died. Where in your example, you have a new gas hot water heater in your house. It's a year or two old. Like that's not a great use of resources. So, it's a balancing act.
Let me answer the very interesting question that you asked as well. Because I don't get a paycheck, right? So it's a different perspective. And I asked a similar kind of question at the advisory meeting, and it's kind of it's a little more complex, unfortunately. But reality is reality. I have solar. I also put solar and batteries in my house, and the inverter had a hardware failure Thanksgiving, and I was without solar for a month. With geothermal, it's 24/7. It's there all the time. And if you kind of push on that, it makes a heck of a lot of sense to go geothermal. And there are more and more. With the thing Leif didn't mention was that they're doing 3 pilots right now. They're going to see which one works best and which companies they want to work with, and this is an evolving and increasingly, from everything I'm reading anyway, decreasing cost technology. But the difficulty, I have trouble not making numerous things in my head, so I try to keep it straight in my voice. The difficulty in it is hooking up to the grid. And that's a long-term project, which makes it very difficult to come up with, what the costs will be, because certain costs are clearly going down, and other costs are going to, and costs and timing are going to be a little harder to get a beat on. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Interesting. Other commissioner comments, questions before I jump in?
I'll follow you.
Okay. I got interested initially about Evergreen for Sonoma when we were seeking real actions. We're called a Climate Action Commission. And I've struggled as chair to focus on that central word, as opposed to passing strategies and talking and possibly even protesting. But you know, where's the action? Where's the beef, as it were? Though I don't eat much beef. And I wondered whether, gee, could we justify subsidizing a small amount of money per month to those local residents who switched from Clean Start to Evergreen. Then when we started looking at the numbers, and neither Vice Chair Conlon nor I have brought with us the right set of numbers we looked at, which were basically GHG emissions associated with Clean Start versus Evergreen. And you had some data here which is a little different, and neither of us brought that. It became clear quickly that Clean Start is incredibly clean, to which we're thrilled, because everybody's getting that benefit from a climate perspective. And the delta of GHG emissions, as we saw them, between Evergreen and Clean Start was pretty darn small. And then we looked at the costs of Evergreen for that, and I couldn't justify that action of going to the council to say, do we want to use some money to subsidize people in individual residences like mine, where I'm on Evergreen as one of the customers here in the city of Sonoma. And it doesn't make economic sense given from a greenhouse gas differential perspective. So that kind of got us going in this whole structure of where are we with all this. And that's kind of what we've been struggling with. It's not so much, well, let me phrase it much more positively. We're thrilled with the degree to which Clean Start is clean from a GHG perspective. And therefore, the delta of further cleanliness from a climate GHG perspective is not very large, as we saw it in those data. And that's got us down this whole road. So that's kind of where we've been at. And we thank you for your presentation. Are there comments, Tom? I want to go into something else, but while we're on this specific greenhouse gas implications of Evergreen versus Clean Start for the city of Sonoma and for individual customers, and I want to go into something else for which I'd love your thoughts and perhaps your agency's agreement to work with us.
Well, I think I'll just sum up, David, my thinking on this is that the benefits accrue to the entirety of the Sonoma Clean Power user base. The extra amount we pay from the city of Sonoma goes to all SCP customers, and maybe even to all the customers in the state of California, because we're creating this model. In terms of being able to justify it, though, for our local ratepayers, we haven't really heard an argument that is, here is the direct benefit to your local ratepayers. And that might be okay. You know, we're a fairly wealthy, privileged city, and making a philanthropic kind of extra payment to Sonoma Clean Power above the minimum necessary might be perfectly within it was our original intention to do so. And that may continue to be our intention here in the city of Sonoma. But I thought it was worth taking the time to understand this a little bit more. I have a couple of other, not directly relevant to the Evergreen differential. If you want to put yours in first, do you want me to?
Can I?
start mine?
I would hope that Leif could respond a little bit to this issue of
So-
the differential value from a climate action greenhouse gas emissions perspective, the delta of difference versus the pricing delta.
So first off, I'm really glad you're asking these questions, because these are tough questions, and a lot of times people think, oh, Evergreen 100% renewable, awesome, done. And you're asking the tough question of like, okay, so at what cost, and can we justify that cost? As a commercial account manager, that's a big part of my role, of figuring out, okay, what is the best path for the customer based on who they are, what their priorities are, and how to move forward. Where I have fallen on Evergreen, particularly when it comes to a public entity that is looking at the larger good, it's a slam dunk. And the reason is, and this is the part that you may not have heard until tonight, is that the way that the carbon is captured, the number that is reported, so we are governed by a particular set of guidelines, it is not showing the true carbon impacts of the grid. And there's a strong argument that the geothermal is actually over-reporting its carbon impacts, and Clean Start and other utility products are under-reporting their carbon impacts. The reason for that, and I'm not an expert in this, but I'll explain it the best that I am able. So each utility is required to have a certain amount of power purchases on the books to supply all the power needs that are out there, whether or not that power needs actually come to fruition. So they'll purchase, say, I'm making up these numbers, but 110% more power than they actually end up using. Now, when they go to report their portfolio, they report on what they purchased. And the law says you have to report first your renewables. And the very last thing you report is your natural gas. So what happens with the utilities, I'll just keep it general, is that they add up all the renewables, and they get to 100%, and okay, this is our carbon impact. All the natural gas gets dropped off. And that's what we're using at night. And those plants are in generally low-income communities. They're getting the burden of air pollution. We are benefiting, Sonoma, Mendocino County, all of us at night when the solar goes offline. That's where a lot of the power is coming from. Not all of it. I mean, we have large hydro. I mean, there's a whole mix. But the point is that we, as an organization, identified this as a gap in transparency. And we went about using Evergreen as this is the standard. This is what we all should be working towards. We're over-reporting our carbon impacts. And we should change the law on how this gets represented statewide. And it wasn't just us, but we influenced that. So in 2028, you're going to see what the real numbers are. And those with Evergreen will have made a good bet. We will have shown that we put our money where we should, which is having the lowest carbon footprint that it makes sense. And those on the other side, it will come to light that they had a much higher carbon footprint than was on paper. And that is unfortunate. So, and I want to acknowledge, like, this is not widely promoted. Like, when I talk about Evergreen, I'm not having a conversation about these very detailed things. And again, I'm glad you're asking these questions. But I also want to acknowledge that until tonight, I'm assuming you were not aware of this reporting discrepancy. And because of that, it changes the math significantly. So whatever numbers you came up with for the price, those are way off, likely off from what it is in the real world.
There weren't so much price numbers, Leaf, as they were greenhouse gas numbers associated with the two sources between the Clean Start. And what we saw was that Clean Start was nearly as clean as Evergreen, which is to be applauded. With those data that we were looking at, that's not a bad thing. It's just a question of the delta of cost versus the negative delta of further greenhouse gas emissions from jumping to Evergreen and paying the premium.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the delta in terms of the carbon difference is much larger than is currently being officially reported.
That's the point you're making, which is a very powerful point, that the data, as is often the case in life when we look at data, doesn't quite reflect the realities of the world.
Yes.
That's not the first time any of us have encountered this slight problem. So we'll continue to puzzle this, but this has been very helpful. I'd like to move to a slightly different issue with respect to Sonoma Clean Power. Michael Heffler, did you want to comment on this, specifically on the Evergreen issue? I'm going to jump to community microgrids as an issue next, which is not an Evergreen issue.
So the other thing that you didn't mention is that there's a number of things that the state mandates that Sonoma Clean Power has no control over, like Diablo nuclear plant and having to buy energy from wonderfully clean energy, as long as you don't mind it being on top of all those faults, right? And the question that I asked Jeff to ask when he went in front of the CPUC commission about that, because there's a number of, that's not the only one, but that's the kind of head, knocker one. the question I asked Jeff to ask is, now you're mandating, the state is mandating we buy this power for the next 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. And I said to him, what is the state going to change so that in 5 years from now we don't have the same conversation? And he said, I'm going to ask him that. So there's a number of things. You know, you made the great point about the real cost, but there are other costs that are hidden in there as well.
Realities are sometimes rather hidden in the fields we work in, to be sure. We've all encountered that. Community microgrids, solar-driven. I'm intrigued with the idea of taking a group of houses, in this case in the city of Sonoma, picture a cul-de-sac or another associated physically proximate homes, and putting them in a joint effort, which I believe, having installed solar when I lived in Oakland about 15 years ago and dealt with PG&E at that time, since I was in Oakland, with all the charm that that has. But getting multiple homes on a system is clearly going to be efficient from an economic perspective. We can deal with one set of inverters. We could deal with shared costing. Is there any way that we in the city of Sonoma, particularly this Climate Action Commission, and Sonoma Clean Power could work together as a way to demonstrate how we could do one or more, starting with one, because the big differences between 0 and 1 is a number, of a community shared solar related system of 2, not 2, but 5 or more houses, for example?
So far, Sonoma Clean Power hasn't developed its own microgrids, but we have participated in the development of one with PG&E at Pepperwood Reserve. It was an area that was very difficult for PG&E to get power to, and due to fire danger and whatnot. And we partner with them to get that to be an all-electric microgrid. I'll take your idea back to the office, to Sonoma Clean Power. I don't have any experience directly with kind of our strategy in microgrids, except that it's something that can be viable in certain circumstances. So thanks for your suggestion.
Thank you, and I'd love further conversation with your organization and this commission on this topic as we look to ways to innovate and become leaders in this county, this state, and this world in this kind of thing, and show what's possible as part of pursuing a climate-smart Sonoma. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Public comment would be welcome. Please again introduce yourself, and Leif, thank you for being here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your, I was just wondering.
And your name again for the record,
Armando
and for others.
Zimmerman.
There's a possibility they're on channel 27 that we can't see them.
Armando
and they wanna
Zimmerman,
know who you are.
Zimmerman. When we spoke, or you were asked about expansion, do you even have a ballpark figure of the capacity regarding the geysers in terms of expansion? Just wondering, and if it's not relevant, that's okay.
I don't have the specific number offhand, but it's larger than the current power being generated from the geysers currently. Yeah, and the area is outside of the current footprint of the geyser complex. So it's areas all around it. The new geothermal technology has developed a lot. Drilling technology has advanced considerably in the last 10 years. So they're able to drill down into areas that maybe were not as accessible before for geothermal work. And it's also, a lot of the newer systems are closed loop, so you're able to use less water. Currently, the geysers technology allows steam to be released. The new systems keep all of that water within that closed loop. So it just, fewer resources are needed to generate it. So there's a lot more, they're able to create power more efficiently as a result.
Are there climatic changes that affect the efficiency of geothermal And, I mean, obviously, if we had a terrible earthquake or anything like that, are there other things, availability of water, anything else climate-wise, because of so much climate change on the surface anyway? I'm just wondering.
I am not aware of anything specific to climate change related to geothermal. Obviously, fire risk is of concern if you have a plant in an area that's a high fire risk area, a chance of it going offline. You mentioned water. Access to water is key, but we need a lot less of it now. The earthquake, find a place that is stable, particularly if you're drilling down, is important. Although geothermal drilling has not been typical of creating any earthquakes. So those are the kind of big ones. The other one is just transmission. So if you're generating a lot of power in one location, you got to get that power to where the customers are. Obviously, we're trying to do this locally, so that creates a lot of resiliency. We're not transporting it across the state or outside the state. But nevertheless, having transmission and protecting that transmission from fires and other natural disasters is important. So it's a baseline resource. It's stable 24/7. So once you get it going, you're not, the weather typically doesn't impact you. Whereas obviously with solar in the wintertime, you have a lot of rainy days, if the wind's not blowing, those impact you.
Does the Sonoma Clean Power use, or is it thinking of developing wind power, wind generated energy?
So currently we purchase wind power. I'll have to look at my slide here. So wind is 15% of the Clean Start portfolio. That's power that we procure, so we aren't actually developing those projects. The projects that we're looking to develop through our new capital projects division is going to be mainly solar paired with battery. That's mainly, and obviously our geozone initiative, all geothermal. But wind is not something we're looking to develop ourselves.
One more question. Since water heaters, is there any information regarding on-demand water heaters, small ones? We have two at our house. I don't have a really good way of determining how to compare that to your larger water heater that works well also. So any info on that, or any opinions as far as trying to go that way?
So I'll tell you what I know. Again, I'm not an expert in that particular area, but so on-demand hot water heaters are typically fueled by gas because you need a lot of energy all at once. That doesn't translate very well to electric. Heat pumps, on the other hand, they're a little slower. They kind of take their time. That can be great. You can heat up your water when the electricity is cheapest, and then have that as basically a thermal battery as a reserve for when power is a little more expensive, maybe in the evening from 4 to 9 p.m. But it's not an on-demand type situation with heat pumps. So I think if on-demand is what you want, gas is probably your best route. But if you're willing to store water and kind of keep it in the tank for a while, heat pump should meet your needs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule on an evening to share
course.
your insights with us. We're greatly appreciative. Any other comments, questions from the commission? I think otherwise, thanks again.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me and asking some really good questions. Thank you.
Based on our public agenda, we're now moving on to agenda item 4.2, which has to do with our various climate action strategy ad hoc committees and presentations. The first one on the list is the Education and Outreach Committee. Norma, would you like to sort of summarize our presentation? I've been doing too much talking. I want you to do it.
Yeah, do we have a report that's coming up to follow? Okay.
We're hoping that's the case. We submitted one, to be sure. I might see if I can find it in what I sent to Jacob. Oh, we have it here. It's printed. How quaint. Thank you. No, that's terrific. I guess in the spirit of the public, we could read this.
Well, I can produce some highlights, so
can-
we don't have to
some
read
highlights.
the whole thing.
Commissioner Fogelberg with highlights of the E&O Education and Outreach Committee's work.
Okay. So much of this is a continuation of what we presented at our last meeting. And the first active project that I can present is Sonoma Climate Smart Tourism, which David and I are working very actively and meeting as regularly as possible.
It's on the screen now.
Okay, thank you. And I don't want to read this all because we all received it, but that is moving forward. A couple of the highlights with that project is looking at ways to reuse as opposed to recycle wine bottles. Another aspect of the project are alternatives for transit options and how that would improve our climate footprint. And yes, so at this point the team is building. At our last team meeting with the tourism group, the mayor attended and shared her support. So I think that's really positive, and our next meeting will be coming up at the end of the month. The Earth Day celebration, which I had volunteered to undertake, I have rescinded from that given the enormity of that task in the rather short period of time, but it is something that I'd like to see happen in 2026 and can start to work on that much earlier. We do have a special event at the Sebastiani Theater, which we are putting together, called Soundscape Ecology, and it is a audio-visual reflections of natural sounds. And the scientist who is responsible for this, Dr. Bernie Krause, will be there with Jack Hines, and there'll be more information about that coming. There likely will be a panel discussion as well. And
It's at 1 p.m. on April 26th, and we'll work hard on publicizing it to try to get people to come, including the Petanque World Championships that are here that weekend. Maybe we can get some Petanquers to come to hear about soundscape ecology.
Okay, I'd like to ask Commissioner Ward to give us an update on the Sonoma Charter School project.
I recently met with a couple members of the faculty from the Sonoma Charter School. One of them is the staff leader of the green team of the charter school. And from what I understand, the green team is a group of students beginning in 3rd grade up until they graduate the charter school that get together, and it seems it's a really student-led organization from what I've learned from the teachers. They have their passions that they talk about during their weekly lunch meetings, and they already have so much ownership over what they're trying to do, and it's really great and inspiring. So the project that really is very much so for our commission is more of us just highlighting on what they're doing and giving our support to them. They don't need much more support because they have so many ideas already and so much student and faculty and parent-led support within their community. What the Green Team is already doing during their lunchtime is that they're creating a schedule and they're going around the school during lunch and recess and picking up the trash that they're seeing all over their campus. And our community member who Norma reached out to, and she's wonderful, and she is a great example for our community. Jana from Refill Madness. She has kids at the charter school, and she is passionate about really teaching these kids from an early age about climate issues. So she wanted to help them expand this project more and how we could do that. So they already work with Recology, and they want to have presentations with Recology there on the difference between the different sorting things, and have the kids learn how to go beyond just putting things in the trash and not leaving it on the ground, and how to compost, what can be composted, how to recycle, and really have these students be the examples during lunch with the help of their teachers on sorting all of this. So it's teaching these kids at a very early age how to have ownership and how to bring this issue to the forefront so that they can then build and layer into other climate issues that are present. And what we're hoping is that these kids bring it home. They bring it to other friends that don't go to the charter school. Right now, they're really excited about an Earth Day video that they're going to be producing. So maybe that's something that our E&O can highlight on as well. Once they have that all done, maybe it's something that we can tag them and shout out the good work that they're doing.
Thank you. One last thought on this, and then we'll see if there are any other questions about it, which would be that in the next phase, we're really focusing on community engagement. And we'd like to get more community members involved in these efforts and involved in these meetings. And we thank the members of the community who've come this evening, but we're hoping to get even larger numbers here in the future to demonstrate support for active climate engagement.
So I think the last point I'd like to make, and I'd like to thank Jennifer and Jacob, you were at that meeting with Sarah Tracy, is really starting to ignite and engage. So we had a very simple Instapost that went out announcing tonight's meeting, and we will be doing much more with the support of Jennifer, and I will be getting them to you much earlier, announcing and encouraging people to come to our meetings. We have a discussion coming up on the agenda about a meeting in March, and today David and I reached out to a person who we hope will help us fill the room for that meeting, depending on the focus of the meeting. So for us, getting the word out and getting people to participate is really key. So that is it.
Any questions from other commissioners about this report before we move on to the next one? Thank you to Amber and Norma.
Yes, I'd like to ask a
Vice
question.
Chair Conlon.
Well, first of all, just a comment on the awareness campaign in terms of our meetings. I'm air-gapped to Instagram, but that message still made it to me. just to let you know the influence of Instagram. So I encourage continuing to use that channel. Excited to hear about the progress on the visitor-focused group. You mentioned the circulator, the local shuttle, and I think City Manager Guin made a comment at the goals meeting that there had already been, that had already happened. There was a pilot or something, and I haven't seen that.
The
any
Tourist
details.
Bureau did a pilot. It was a gasoline or diesel vehicle, not electric, but it was apparently a successful effort with a bus that was done for a while, headed by the Tourist Bureau. So it provides a model. We're looking at the possibility of getting funding. We might reach out to Impact 100, for example, to see if we can actually fund the development of an electric shuttle in the shorter term.
So are there any details on that route and hours and size of the vehicle and any of that sort of thing? Because that seems to me to be the stage we would need at planning. We'd need to have some information on that.
Not yet.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing that when it's ready. On the, let's see, I think I had another question and it slipped me, so I'm gonna let it go.
We can always defer and bring it back later when, and Commissioner Fogelberg isn't actually coming up.
Another of the items we talked about at the meeting that we had with Jacob and Sarah, and I'm looking now, for those of you who can't see it, Jennifer, is putting our projects on the website. And Sarah had mentioned that there are new website guidelines and criteria. And at some point, Jennifer, I'd like to connect with you about what that is, how much we can actually put on the website so people can see that there is action happening from this committee. So I want to bring that back, as this is extremely important to the E&O, because otherwise our residents will really have no idea what we're doing. And we need that to be very much present and to be searchable when we post things. So I am now done.
Yeah, we do have some tips that were prepared based on our climate strategy maybe a year or so ago. But I'm reminded today that one of our colleagues in Santa Rosa area recommended the book Life After Doom, which came out last year. And in the appendix to that book, there's a recommendation to use the fact sheets that have been printed at Eco America. And I took a look at them today, and they're like well-prepared, two-sided documents that are fairly concise and struck me as being, hitting the right level of sophistication and not being too dense like I would be capable of producing. And they're audience specific. There's like 6 different types, and there's either a faith-based approach or a health-based approach, depending on your orientation to values. And so I think that would be a good set of resources for you guys to look at on the E&O committee.
Excellent. If you would send those through Jennifer and Jacob, I think is the right way to do it. That would be greatly appreciated, Tom, and thank you. That's terrific. We are working with the chamber team to put out some flyers like that, both electronic and one sheet of paper, 2 pages. For example, at the restaurants, at the wine tasting bars, and so on, that we're attempting to become more and more climate smart here in Little Sonoma, and these are some of the issues to be aware of. So flyers like that are on our agenda and not yet fully produced. Any other comments or questions on the education and outreach team before we move on to Seeing none, grants and funding. Sandra, would you like to help me out by taking a lead on the grants presentation?
Okay, so grants and funding. The first thing I should identify is that Jacob has organized a spreadsheet where any grant and funding from across our whole commission can be put into that, and it's fantastic. It's a great resource so that we can try to be prescient and get ahead of the game, so to speak, rather than following behind what's going on, and start to prepare, because sometimes grants take a year to really do. And so from that then segues to the CAL FIRE grant, which Jennifer and I and David Morell and people from other commissions also worked on. And we did not get that grant. We weren't really expecting to get that grant, though, and it was mostly to help set up a framework for us so we could understand what would be good in terms of multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary activities, and to set up a library and to get some feedback. And it would have been fantastic if we got it as well. I mean, that would have been sort of hitting the ball out of the park. We got feedback. Jennifer asked for feedback, and then I followed up to get some additional feedback. The biggest strength from our grant was that our partnerships were fantastic. They really liked the approach that we took. And so that was very good, because that then informed subsequent things that we've been doing as well. The other thing that wasn't really a result of the grant but coincided with it was the RFP that then Jacob, I believe, put out. And so elements from that grant, such as doing an inventory of our trees citywide, canopy cover, that is moving forward. We already decided that we were going to do that regardless. And so we need that inventory to sort of, you need a baseline information to move forward with anything you're going to do in terms of climate action strategies that involve canopy cover and trees, heat island effect reduction, things like that, cool corridors. So all those things, you have to sort of know what your as-is condition is. And so the tree inventory is important for that. And then they also added a additional component to it for the plaza trees, because a plaza master plan has been in a desired element for a long time, and of course that's sort of the heart of Sonoma. So there's one that had been done. Was it 2017 was the last one, about 2017? And so that's really is being an updated plan. The other thing is that we had Tom had given some transportation, some active transportation, some green infrastructure type of information, and the city wasn't really able to pursue that. But I will say that it overlaps. I mean, these kind of cross-sectional climate action requires this sort of strategic groundwork. And so this last year really was about setting up these complex long-term goals with data-driven, funding-dependent kind of projects for this big vision. And so what came out of that was understanding more about Go Sonoma and the Go Sonoma funding, and how that is being put in place, and how that intersects with a lot of our climate action goals. And so we've had some conversations with Mike Berger about what he's doing in terms of trails and where that intersects with our circulation and transportation. And there's been some expansion about that's been very good for us in terms of the pedestrian bicycle plan and transportation as well. And then so I think maybe and then the other one is in terms of large-scale strategic planning, whereas pursuing the idea of priority conservation areas to draw in more investment or get more partnerships to come in. And again, that was something that we weren't able to pursue just because of resources and time. However, the partners for that became very interested in Sonoma. And so while we didn't put an application in, they have gotten back in touch with us through the Sonoma Land Trust, saying that they are interested in having any potential corridors or priority areas link up with a regional conservation projects that are going on. And so it's sort of a chicken egg, which one goes first, but those projects are dancing together, I guess you could say. I don't know how else to say that. Yeah.
Thank you, Sandra. questions for Cedra from other commissioners? We have a detailed report in writing from the grants team. We again encourage other ad hocs to present to the grants team through appropriate channels requests for grants in their areas of expertise and climate action. I would also note that over the last few weeks it's become quite evident that federal funding for these initiatives is likely to diminish rather sharply. We're seeing already massive cutbacks in CAL FIRE funding from federal government on environmental and green schoolyards and so on. We're seeing major changes happening, which pushes us much more toward foundations. And in the March meeting, we're going to be talking specifically about opportunities in the future for green links, corridors, and we'll sort of use that as the basis for potential foundation funding. And joint efforts with Sonoma Land Trust, Sonoma Ecology Center, and so on will be highly possible, which will catch the eyes of foundations. Anybody else on grants before we move on? Yes.
I just had one
Jennifer.
other thing about grants to add is, it's really critical to make sure that when we're looking at these grants to understand whether they're planning grants or actual like infrastructure grants. Because I know that we've had a couple recently, but we had to have shovel-ready projects. And so it's kind of like, all right, we need to get the understanding. So like for the EV charging, right, we need to have an EV charging plan. We need to understand what the infrastructure needs are, where we're going to put them before we can apply for the grant to actually install them. And so those are the types of things that we need to make sure when we're identifying the grants that some of them may be able to be used for the actual design work. And those are the ones that we need to go prioritize, and then the ones that we actually install. And then, of course, as always, with grants and everything, it all comes down to capacity. So.
And I would just add that in the Green Schoolyards area where I've been active, we had 12, we being in this case the Sonoma Ecology Center, we had 12 planning grants provided, and they turned out to provide some very good plans for 12 different schools in highly disadvantaged areas, and one approved implementation grant, which is currently stalled because it was IRA money, federal money funneled through CAL FIRE. But that's the exact point, that until you get a planning grant done, it's hard to move to implementation. You need the plan, which is credible, and that can now be taken. That particular plan for a Green Schoolyards is going out to potential foundation funding with the collapse of the federal pass-through funding. Anything else on grants before we move on to the next topic? Public comment on this? Yes, please. Thank you, Tom.
Hi, Dustin Lee. I'm a local resident. I'm interested in the idea, the grant funding for research towards multidisciplinary, multi-departmental efforts towards similar or maybe corresponding goals. I have the idea that maybe some solutions fix multiple problems. So I was originally hoping there might be a way to slush different departmental funds towards a collaboration towards walkability or something like this, a charrette that gets public input, but perhaps there's a grant or some other kind of funding that we could look for.
Thank you, and I think that's consistent with your presentation to the City Council with respect to some of this thinking.
The goals at the goals workshop. Can you repeat your name, please, for the record?
Yes, thank you. Dustin Lee, D-U-S-T-I-N-L-E-E.
Thank you, Dustin. Let's move on then to the next ad hoc report, which is, turn the page, please. Glasses on. What the heck is the next one?
David, through the
Trees.
chair, I'm going to
Trees.
squeeze in hopefully a timely comment on that public comment.
Yes, of course.
I was going to wait until the transportation discussion to talk about the Go Sonoma grant opportunity, which is going to be coming before us in the late summer. This is the SCTA, the Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authority's they renamed themselves just to keep us all on our toes this past week. But I just wanted to mention that we have an opportunity to start thinking about how to access those sales tax funds that are collected under this Go Sonoma measure. Right now, this similar project is funding our citywide bike and pedestrian improvements. And we've just completed the active transportation plan for the city, it was just adopted last week. So, or maybe even this week. So, if we could get some of that creative, cross-departmental, multi-disciplinary focus, maybe we can start to think about how to get ready to do an application under Go Sonoma for this next round. And I think these are every 5 years is how they've structured it, the Go Sonoma package. And they look for multiple sources of funding for us. The RCPA, SCTA does. So just to put that out there for something for us to continue to drill down. And I think Jacob has that on the spreadsheet the city's using now for tracking planning and implementation grant funds. So looking forward to working.
That sounds like a very important comment for the next set of action items for the grants team and building on the active transportation plan. And for respect to earlier public comment about living on Spain Street, as I recall it, the first item in a series of items in the newly approved active transportation plan is focused on Spain Street, both West and East Spain Street, from one end to the other, as I recall from the list of quite a number of projects. So that's an important piece of this puzzle. Now we're moving on to the next one.
Yeah, I
Jennifer.
just moved over to the next one. I was playing with it, but so what I want to do, just so that it's on everybody's radar too, is when we have the meeting in March, we're going to look at the council goals and our strategic, actions that we've identified, and potentially redo our ad hocs, and kind of have a little bit more finite focus on a project itself. So think about that. Think about some of the stuff that you guys have been working on. If just for an example, I have looked at the priority conservation areas. I was on a call with MCTA about that and the call for nominations and stuff. And we are eligible, right? And so that's first step. But then there's other aspects too, right? We need to kind of have like a little white paper to be able to educate council, because they're the ones at the end of the day to decide if we actually do apply. And so just things like that. So I want to just put that out there for everybody to just think about when in March, when we come back with what the goals were and really kind of look at our strategies and what we've kind of been doing to implement those strategies, that we kind of isolate what that may be. So just keep that in the back of your head.
Thank you, important planning. So we're moving on next to the transportation ad hoc. Who would like to present on?
It's trees first.
Oh, trees. How did I lose trees? Trees. Oh, yeah, sure. I missed trees. I'm embarrassed by that. Who's going to do trees?
I'll do trees. Okay, trees.
Cedra's going to do trees.
I'll do trees. I'll do part of trees because I think trees are going to come up in multiple ways, because it's a big topic, and it's like an indicator species for a bunch of other things for us. So and that's really what we've done with trees, is we've looked at it in a more holistic way, and so our understanding of trees has gone beyond just their role as an aesthetic green carbon-based life form. And so and we talked about them originally as carbon sequestration, but really it's their role in terms of evapotranspiration and cooling and serving as a way to draw people out of their cars for cool corridors and get people to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and reduce energy consumption with housing, energy costs. And so it's the idea of trees is really expanded beyond just what they are as things that you see on street trees. And Leo's been talking about climate forward trees, and there's different commissions, not just here, but Parks, Recreation, and Open Space has a tree committee, and they have a tree selection committee. So there's lots of people who are thinking about trees and trying to figure out how trees can be integrated holistically. So with that said, the idea is to try to support something that cuts across not just all of our ad hoc groups, from transportation to education to energy to circulation, but also cuts across commission works, because there's pros, there's planning, there's all these other groups as well. And so trees are functionally a tool to get policy done at this point. And so we want to try to support the city's effort in that respect, and the outcome, I believe, would be an update of the city ordinances. That's one of the things, but of course we need to know with the inventory. There's a lot of as Jennifer's just saying, we need all the planning information. We need the data first, and then the outcome is, okay, here are the ordinances. Here's the tree line cool corridor priority areas. Here's how we're going to integrate public art and placemaking, or here's where the underserved areas are, where trees can be planted. And then that also gets into some of the things about, well, which trees, which are the climate forward trees that make the most sense, which then necessarily means we're interacting with pros and other groups as well. So that's kind of the overview of trees. Some of the specific outcome action items that occurred was the SCTA active transportation plan had some input from out of some of the work that we've done in this committee that had a lot of community engagement in it, and so they've updated their active transportation plan to include green infrastructure as a new policy that they are asking circulation, I believe, to include. And then they also identified a new area for planning, which was the 5th West Quarter, in part because we have inequity in our tree distribution, and that's also, if you look at heat maps, an area that has high heat island effect. And so both those issues are important for the West Side and 5th Street West. And so that's why those came up as high priority areas, and that was captured by the SCTA in their active transportation plan. I hope I've captured everything, but I'm sure I probably missed something, because trees are, it's hard to come up with a conversation where, well, we could use trees for that. Well, yes, we could. So feel free to jump in if I've missed something.
Thank you, Commissioner Nathan. And of course, there's a lot of this is going to come up at our special March 12th meeting, where we're going to be looking specifically at some of the opportunities to relate green infrastructure, green links, to the city's evolving goals and the whole and the general plan update, the whole process. So, any other comments, Leo?
Yeah, I wonder, I know I'm scheduled at the end, I wonder if I should just jump in here, because we've talked and exchanged emails, Cedra and I have been downtown to see my boss here, Jacob, and getting some communications with Natalie. So I could pass something out really quick. I'll pass these that way, and I'll pass these three this way.
Is there a way to make this available to the public? There, we're getting it.
It's in an email, yeah, absolutely. I could refine it one more polish. And today in the newspaper, in the Financial Times of London, I'll give you that. Make sure we have enough. The temperature of the planet has broken the record for the highest temperature on record, the average temperature, which is an average of the night and daytime, just divided by 2. And does everybody have one? And so,
We're sharing with us.
I got one more. Go ahead. What do you need? A graph? And so what I had recommended was I could see working with the buildings committee. I went to school on that they had a standard. So they're engineers. I'm more of a scientist. I'm much more a certain different type of math. The engineers use standards, things that work. Whatever they do, a wing, whatever. And I watched this, and they were just pulling these standards down from 1,000 other engineers south of here who had worked on this in California. So it was all very local and applicable, what they were doing. And so I thought, what do I know that could mirror that? And in ecosystems where you're going into an urban environment like a city, you look for a standard, and what you're really looking for is a vegetation climate classification. It's sort of a dream solution where the plant measures the temperature within tenths of a degree centigrade. So in grapes, if the temperature changes 1 degree, as it did in 2000 in Napa Valley, everybody who's growing those Chardonnay grapes just deinstalled them. They put them in, paid all the money to put them in, and then they saw there was no market. They didn't know why, but the grower just immediately deinstalls everything. So Napa that year went from being dominant Chardonnay, white wine, to dominant red wine. And then they just installed just 4 times as much Cabernet. And so we went into the Cabernet period, and the temperature of Napa has, through 2020, increased 1.6 degrees. I have done a large study that has measured this. So Napa's Cabernet is now not going to work. And so what we're doing is, whether it's a city or an agricultural enterprise, you look for climate refugia, that is a refuge. And you just get a map of a GIS map of temperatures on the planet, and you imagine parachute in where you see the temperature. Take the temperature that's equal to mid-Napa is Sardinia. And you jump out of an airplane and you grab all the wines in Sardinia and you read the label of the plant and you come back home and you plant that. And that's what's happening in landscape architecture now. What's the company out on Napa, West Napa? They've got a new office. They're doing a lot of little projects around here, or big projects. On the right, they have a blue hedge, and the dentists are on the right. So as you go down past the church, well, just you could take a look. So I wanted to do a project in my backyard, and I was growing camellias, and I realized I can't keep them alive. I added unlimited water, computer watered them, and 50 camellias died. So I put in these, the national tree for South Africa. I looked on the map for my temperature, and I thought, can I get this tree that's in South Africa, the state tree, the national tree? It's called a yellow podocarpus, and it comes in an icy blue or a yellow color. So it's very beautiful, and it loves the temperature of Napa Valley. And so I put it here, and you can change the water. One of the advantages of, if you get the right plant, it halves the water. Or maybe it dropped my water usage 60%, because the plant doesn't need as much to be the same height. So for every 10 feet, these trees are using like nothing. You can even find trees that don't like water, and you can grab those out of another refuge. So originally the plaza, there were a lot of horticulturists in California in the beginning, through the University of California, land-grant college, and there's a monkey pod pine there. Anybody notice that? If you look, it's the tallest tree there. So somebody realized, oh, we're at the subtropical latitude, and it must be monkey pods here. So they put a monkey pod in there. There's a lot of chaparral trees, you know, from the hillsides that used to be there. There are not as many madrones as there were, but madrones were really popular. California in 1900 and 1930 was covered in madrones. So what we're looking for is a vegetation of our new temperature. We have a new temperature in Sonoma, and we want to grab plants from climate refugia around the world that are mapped by Kopp and Geiger, and they show you can get this or you can get that. It was brought up that by Cedra that she said that they're using an SSP. I think it's a it's called a shared socioeconomic pathway. And I would call it a rubric. It's just making up a name for COP, for the Climate Action Committees and Symposium, which was the Paris Accords. And the poorer countries wanted a negotiating position, so they came up with this SSP. And it's just made up out of thin air, and they hooked it up with aspirational things like can the BRICS or the ASEAN that Biden put together. It's a group of economies that want to negotiate with the rich countries, the G7, to get money because of temperature and climate negotiations. And what's happened is just in the last 24 months, all the countries, the major countries except France, have given up on the socio-economic deal. They're breaking the deal. The Germans, the English, everybody is just saying we're not going to meet any of these things. It's the new spirit that Trump has injected into the world, and people were just choking on the cost of this. They just can't afford it. You know, the economies are suffering everywhere. So the peak oil hasn't even begun. It looks like it's going to keep going. And Scripps Institute, the person who runs the climate action there with NOAA, told me we can't meet in public. He said, let's go down here into a courtyard, and I'll tell you what's going to happen, and that the governor knows what's happening, and he's got the report, hundreds of pages, but they're not going to speak it because it would cause havoc with the wine industry, with agriculture, everything. But the temperature is going to get really hot, and we're moving where the whole state, except for the valleys along the coastline, are going to become hot Mediterranean and cold desert. The mid-coast is already moving to becoming cold desert. So the plants that would thrive here, we could plant in these corridors you're talking about. We can find forests and make them, and we can have a wide range of plants. And they could meet at the plaza, you could imagine, and they could come out of a landscape architect plan. It could be very flexible. It could include all the plants in the corridors. And through a little bit of trial and error, you would see what could work on Montini Trail versus down there, this side, or over here by the General Valeo's house, you know, in the field back there. What can work going out across the valley? What can work in neighborhoods that won't be too tall, right? Because then they would encroach on neighbors, and then the neighbors would prune them. And yeah, so I would suggest that the Kopp and Geiger can meet anything you want to do with a shared socioeconomic pathway, if you want to be part of the socioeconomic discussions because of inequality in the area, or it could equally be part of just a climatology, straight ahead climatology Kopp and Geiger study, because Kopp and Geiger can use SSP. So that's what I'm suggesting, that if we chose one or two climate scenarios that we thought A or B, it doesn't matter to me, anything would be an improvement, and then we used the Kopp and Geiger, the newest maps from 2020, we could come up with a standard the way the Buildings Committee did. And then we could say that we're going to be in this climate, and we're predicting it, and we're going to have these plants, and if we're wrong, we're gonna go, if it's hotter, we would jump to another slightly hotter standard and a different vegetation map. So anyway, that's what I would be proposing.
I think this is an excellent idea for the Trees Ad Hoc Committee to pursue between now and the March 12th meeting with a little more detail on how this Copen-Geiger paradigm could be actually used in a City of Sonoma framework. Thank you for this input.
You're welcome, thank you.
March 24th. March 24th.
Not 12, 24,
Today's the 12th. We're going to meet on.
but not, today's not March. 24, not 12.
Is there time for a question?
Public comment is always welcome at the appropriate time, so I think this time is about as appropriate as it's going to get, and then we're going to have to move on a little bit, but yes, please.
I'm fascinated with what you're talking about. But you seem to imply that with the grape varietals in Napa and so forth, that with climate change accelerating, it seems to be, what's the likelihood of you come up with the correct plants for a particular area? How long does it take those plants to develop? And what would be the lifespan, given that the climate change is happening so quickly?
Just real quick, a plant that's misapplied like Chardonnay, the vineyards die in 18 years. If the vineyard is cooler, because Chardonnay likes a different temperature, it could go 40 years. So you probably double the lifespan of the plant by getting the right Copen-Geiger classification and get it from that refugia and bring it to California. That's originally how it was done. They went to the places in Italy, and Zinfandel comes from the boot of Italy, and it just happens to have the right Copen-Geiger classification, and it was everywhere here.
Thank you very much. This is March 24th, not the 12th, and it's a Monday, not a Wednesday, so, according to my calendar, which I just opened to clarify this. So thank you. So now we're at the next.
Which is the right date?
24th of March is the special meeting. Transportation Ad Hoc appears to be next on my listing.
I'll jump in on it.
Mr. Conlon,
I'll jump in on that.
buildings too? Oh, buildings there, but it's different here, so, but I'm corrected, apparently after trees we have buildings and then transportation. John, Tom's gonna do buildings, thank you, so we can try to move it along.
We didn't submit a report this time, but the committee did meet a couple of times, and we're at an inflection point right now. We're waiting for the county, the county's doing, RCPA is doing there's a bunch of studies coming together, and we're going to be in a great position to work on buildings when these studies are done. The Bayren is issuing a new single-family incentive program, and I think there's also a multifamily program that's being updated. Obviously, everyone's concerned about federal funding, but the other thing that's happening is we're about to get a major building stock assessment is going to drop. So we're going to have the characteristics data on how many, what is the age of a single family, of the homes in Sonoma? How many are single family? How many are owned by renters or are occupied by renters? And that's going to be very helpful for planning how we're going to reach how we're going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our building sector. The other major initiative that we're working on in buildings is the new construction code update. Title 24 will be updated at the beginning of next year, and the code is already out. The minimum statewide standard has been published, but we're in the stage right now where the reach codes to go beyond that minimum for for jurisdictions to voluntarily adopt a more aggressive code. And Sonoma being a leading jurisdiction and one it's a goal of ours to be a climate leader, has indicated an interest in doing that. And so we anticipate that the draft REACH code templates will be available very soon. So we're on the threshold, and hopefully we'll have a little more concrete detail before the March meeting that we can present to Jacob. Maybe have a preparatory meeting on that so that we're ready on buildings come March.
And I do want to let you know, I do sit on the calls for the REACH code, which is just for staff of jurisdictions within our region, which all of ABAG. And so just letting you know, so as those calls come again, and start looking at them, because that's the key, is sharing resources for us.
Right, and just
And
my
I'm very
understanding.
interested in Bayren and would like to consider a presentation, perhaps, from them. They've done a lot of potential outreach to our citizenry, and we might find ways to work with Bayren to do outreach to Sonoma residents about their opportunities for building conservation.
True. I was jumping ahead to the REACH code, new construction, policy change, and my understanding is that because it wasn't included in the minimum statewide code, that is gas at new construction, gas furnaces and gas water heaters at new construction, we really think that that's likely to be the focus of the REACH code we'll want to adopt here. And then there's a second one, which is, are we going to consider requiring people when their furnace or their water heater goes out to replace it with an electric heat pump powered machine? And right now what we're hearing, and I just was chatting with Zeke Hausfather last night on Blue Sky about how his furnace went out down in Berkeley. He's a world-renowned climate scientist, one of the guys that does those climate models that are the RCP pathways. And he was going, oh my goodness, I just did the numbers and I'm getting a quote for $24,000 to put heat pumps in my house. And that is in fact what it is in the Central Bay Area right now to do that. 22,000 I think was the number he was being quoted as an average in the region. So we have a dire affordability problem in the building sector. And so that's something we're going to want to be looking at closely.
And I thought it was the price of eggs that was driving everything.
Well, so to the other dimension here is that, and I was going to say this later in the meeting, but I'll say it now. During the goal setting, the city council members were asked to consider their values, and I noticed, and I mentioned this to Councilmember Wellender on his way out of the room, the word resilient did not come up as a value of the city in that brainstorming discussion. I think it was probably an oversight. We didn't have an opportunity to interject new values into the discussion for us as members of the public. And I know that it is something that we all care about, and I mentioned it to the fire marshal, and he said he was concerned about it as well. We are looking at those temperatures that Leo was talking about. It is going to change the way we do business, the way we live, and whether many of us will even still be able to be here, to be honest, given the cost escalation as well as the fire and flooding problems. We want to make this meeting close up soon so that I don't get flooded on my way home. So, ranting a little bit here, but just to say we're thinking about all of these matters in the context of buildings.
And it's all central to the goals and the responsibilities of this city commission, to be sure. Okay, Tom, are you going to talk transportation? I'm watching the clock as well.
Yeah, I agree. I did put together a fairly detailed report on this one for our committee. And just to highlight again that we're happy that the active transportation plan has recently been approved. especially the element that Cedra mentioned, the 5th Street West being elevated as a key pathway through the city. Also the Highway 12 along West Napa and up toward the Verano-Maxwell Park intersection. So those are things that are moving forward. We have the opportunity with the bicycle, the downtown plaza planning process is underway. Regional Climate Protection, Sonoma County Transit Authority is working on a VMT mitigation opportunity that we might want to be taking a look at when it's available to review. And what else is going on in transportation land? Right, we have our own planning process around the plaza, and I know we're into phase 1 of that plaza process, but one of the things coming out of the county is the TDM, Transportation Demand Management Strategies, and Sonoma is one of the few places that doesn't have paid parking policies in our local core, and obviously that's a great way to raise revenue, to improve the plaza, and to improve the visitor experience of people who come here. So that's something we're going to want to take a closer look at over the next year or two that planning process is underway, and perhaps in our general plan update process. EV charging, again, a lot of concern that some of those funds may get held up because of the federal funding situation. Last month I had said that we had an opportunity closing with Brian Albee leaving Sonoma County Transit, our county-wide transit provider. He was at a meeting yesterday that I attended, so I think he's still hanging around. I'm not sure if he's still under, maybe he was talking about the end of the fiscal year and not the calendar year, and we still have an opportunity to work with him to confirm that we get improved transit services throughout Sonoma Valley, as is already planned, as described in the report. And then finally, our fossil fuel and reduced idling measures that are on the list here. Jacob, I wanted to make sure you were aware I put together a list of idling references for us to review. I think that should be fairly straightforward now. So that's my report for the transportation group.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments on that before we're moving on?
I just have a couple
Sandra.
comments. The transportation element, the ad hoc work, I think it's really important for our Climate Action Committee, because it's the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions is transportation. And so all these other activities that we're doing, as much as it possible, feeds into getting people out of their cars, reducing vehicle miles traveled, VMT, and reducing greenhouse gas source from transportation, I think is really critical. And it also just comes down to the nuts and bolts of what we're offering, what the infrastructure is, and what it is that makes people comfortable to get out of their cars. So it's just old-fashioned traffic safety elements for a lot of people in Sonoma, since we have older people. And so this map that Tom presented, where the crash data was really helpful communicating with Sonoma County Transportation Authority. And the other, it's not a commission, I don't believe. The other group that works on this is the Traffic Committee. Is that right? And so the Traffic Committee they're also they're a nuts and bolts group. And it seems to me that there's a reason to interact, because really getting people out of their cars and getting them to feel safe, and we have the lowest average distance car vehicle use, but some of the highest total mileage use, because people are so frequently in their cars for lots of little trips. And so that means there's a huge opportunity to get people to feel more comfortable with all these little trips, to not actually be in their cars by using some alternative method. And part of that is also getting them to feel safe. And so I know that traffic safety gets complaints about people not feeling safe. And then we have this traffic safety data. They're surprisingly non-overlapping information. So I think that's a interesting piece of data that needs to be looked at to help us reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you, Sandra. And there are two critical pieces I would add to that. One is the electric-powered downtown shuttle, and the other is affordable housing.
Yes,
for a lot of
fantastic.
our employees who have to drive in from Vallejo and Fairfield and so on because they can't come close to affording to live around our lovely little town. So affordable housing is an issue, not only social equity issue and not only an economics issue, it's a climate issue. Okay, I think that takes care of our ad hoc report.
Chair, I think we may have a public comment if you want to open that up
yes.
again.
Mr. Lee, was that the right name?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, I appreciate the discussion between departments and the ad hoc committees, because I just found another connection. I'm reading Missing Middle Housing, a little bit of a plug for housing types that do more than just housing types. One of the things I just read, in contrast, the share of people commuting to work in non-drive modes, transit, walk, or bike, living in missing middle housing is more than double that of detached units. While for those living in large detached units, the share is nearly double that of missing middle housing. So the connections are real. They may be invisible, but they're important. And so I just like missing middle housing. It may solve more than one problem.
Yeah.
And they're not even invisible when we look at our situation here in the VMT.
Well, we're going to need to, as we push through ourselves through the general plan process, to be sure that our plan is able to meet the analysis requirements of CEQA. We're going to need to be doing things like that to reduce vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. So I look forward to getting into that in the analysis phase of
Nothing like an EIR to keep us awake at night. Sir, a quick one, please. It's after 8, so public comment always
Quick one.
welcome.
I have
Quick
a
comment.
I have a personal interest in traffic safety. I've been basically attending traffic safety committee meetings, with the exception of maybe one in the last 2 or 3 years, and before that I was on the traffic safety committee for about 8 years as a public member. Anyway, I don't know what happens behind closed doors. I know they're working on matrices and ways to handle public issues, traffic hazard reports, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as the meetings themselves, none of this is ever discussed. And you know, I'm just putting myself out on the line on that. Maybe somebody can say, oh, that's, you know, I was asleep or something. None of these issues are discussed. People in Sonoma drive as basically a percentage of people drive as fast as they want to because there's no consequences. They basically, it's up to everybody what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. And I know from the sheriff's department, I understand, or from our police department, that enforcement is a difficult thing. It's expensive, and they basically kind of bow out of it a little bit. Not because they're not trying. They're doing a lot of stuff at the high school with kids and, you know, that kind of stuff, and I appreciate that. And but nonetheless, it's been a moot point.
Thank you.
If I may, I know it's getting late, but I think Mr. Zimmerman's comments are perfectly timed, because I, this past week, raised some concerns about so I mentioned before the Go Sonoma grant that's $1.6 million coming to the city of Sonoma to improve bicycle pedestrian safety throughout the entire city. one of the key elements of the original proposal were speed tables along the city-wide, the bike path across the top of town. I don't recall there being a public process where that element was removed from the plan. But when I looked at it recently, I realized, oh, it's no longer there. They're talking about just crosswalks and rapid rectangular flashing beacons, and which are less inherently traffic calming and, in my opinion, safe than a raised table for the bike lane, particularly at 5th Street West where speeds get quite high. So I reached out to our representative to SCTA, Council Member Lowe, and city staff. I had a good conversation with Ashley Cotter, who works for Mike Berger in that Public Works Department and is tasked with implementing the contract. And she too was intrigued by the finding, and so has been looking into this. One of the things that came out in our conversation is that that committee, the Traffic Safety Committee, tends to be reactive, as I understand it, to the traffic hazard reporting forms that individual members of the city bring forward. And in the case, for example, of the recent speed table added on East Napa Street, I'm sorry, East Spain, it's Napa, East Napa, thank you.
It's there, near the cemetery.
Yes. That was a citizen-initiated process. Here we have had a planning process initiated by city staff for many years to do a capital improvement plan and put speed tables in across the other parts of the city. That was not moved, apparently not successfully moved forward in the current round of funding. But this citizen complaint-driven process seemed to be getting what is actually getting the squeaky wheels getting the grease. So it made me, and I think staff member Cotter, consider how are we making decisions in the city? Are we really doing a planning first, comprehensive, left hand knows what the right hand is doing approach? And so I look forward to improving on that. And I really have to say, I feel staff is getting much better at this as we have cohesion in city leadership and in staff leadership. And I think Mr. Zimmerman's point about the Traffic Safety Committee in particular, we really could be using that committee to much better effect if they were more in sync with the issues we discuss in this commission. So those are my comments on this topic. I look forward to this getting fixed over the course of next year.
Let me just add one thing. So when I was saying that we have the data here that you presented and then the Traffic Commission, and these are non-overlapping bits of information, that's what I was sort of referring to, is that there's a lot of research data that can inform our design or where we're trying to make improvements that have a wealth of information behind it. And then there's also community input, and that's valuable too. Both of those things need to come together for decision making so that they're not done in isolation, but they both inform each other. But that data has to be there because, I mean, everything else is anecdotal, and then there's data.
All right, I think in recognizing 8:15 and so on, I'd like to move to director comments and announcements as the next topic on our agenda.
Yes,
Try to move us
so
along.
yeah, I just wanted to say that we are looking at doing a special meeting in March on the 24th, which is a Monday. And as soon as I get confirmation that that we can do Zoom and everything, then I'll let you guys know. That's the only thing I'm really waiting on at this point, is just to make sure that KSVY can provide us that service. And then we will discuss at that meeting. Really the focus is going to be mostly on what the goals are. And so there's been, many of you, half of you, most of you, came to the meeting where City Council discussed them. But what that is adopted will be on March 5th. So that will be the City Council meeting that they will discuss that final list. And then we'll look at that as a group and look at our climate action strategies. How do they merge? How do they add something to what we're doing? And then I want to talk about then other specific projects, things that have just come up from your research and implementing these strategies, and kind of set out, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is what I'm going to, what we need to do to get it done. And that maybe that will help set a little bit more focus and able to accomplish some of the things that you guys are wanting to accomplish. With that, hoping by March 24th, I'll also have a better understanding of some potential timing for when aspects of the general plan elements will be coming forth, and narrowing down when we'll be doing a little bit more conversations around different topics. So just helping to be ready for that meeting to talk more about that as well. And then we can discuss also if we want to have a special meeting later in the year. And then I know that there's also a potential conflict with a meeting in November, so we can also talk about modifying that meeting if need be. So look at your calendars. If you don't know when our regularly scheduled meeting is, let me know, or Jacob, and we can send you what the calendar is for the year for our regularly scheduled, which is quarterly. So with that, regularly scheduled climate action.
Climate action. The issue is November 12th. On my case, I'll be on an international trip, so either tonight or we can postpone until the March 24th for an action to potentially move that, or else
Yeah,
the vice chair could be there.
I
to run the
think
meeting.
that we can
I'll
just,
be on a plane.
yeah, we can discuss that at the next one. I just want everybody to have an opportunity to look at their calendar and kind of understand
It's
how they're
November
getting
5th
conflicts.
as the current official meeting.
Twelve.
November 12th is the official meeting date. Before. November 5 would be a good day for me. It's a week
But-
before, still on a Wednesday.
So
But
we
can
will
do
have to
that in
look.
March.
Yeah, we have to look because of all the conflicts with other meetings and things during the months. But but go ahead and look at the climate action meeting dates and see if you have any conflicts, and then we can kind of do them all at once. Okay? We'll do that later. We'll do that later. It's fine.
We're next up, Commissioner reports and comments. Commissioner McCloskey, I believe you've already done that presentation. Are there any other commissioner comments other than time to go home?
I just want to know if you if you have any homework for us on website content, just to make sure we're doing that for you. And secondly, I think our ad hocs have to sunset after a year, and we're probably due for that pretty soon.
In, I think, April, so that's why I was going to do it in March.
Great, okay, so we'll have that conversation that I'm anticipating in March. Good.
We do the Cope and Geiger for the trees. What's the drop dead dates for having something put together for the city council?
So we can talk offline about kind of what you're thinking. I think what I heard from the commission was that you guys would talk as an ad hoc and kind
Okay.
of bring something forward in March of kind of, this goes to what are we looking to accomplish with that? What does that look like? And how would you move forward with something like that? And so we can talk offline a little
Okay.
bit more, but it would be with your ad hoc committee.
Okay,
That
thanks.
sounds like that's mostly in the purview of the trees ad hoc, is what I'm hearing.
I think it starts here at the Trees Ad Hoc, but it may very well end up with the pros group and the city arborist who's
Yeah.
under contract.
Yeah.
But I think it starts here.
Are there any other commissioner comments? Amber-
Yes.
Amber's up.
This was on behalf of Ronnie Jo Grooms, the program director at our local radio station, KSVY. I'm so sorry, Ronnie. For the sake of timing, I don't think I'm going to read this whole letter, but I do believe it was emailed. I think Ronnie's back there right now. He's behind the scenes. But tomorrow is National World Radio Day, and every year UNESCO selects a certain theme that they want to highlight on behalf of radio. And this year is radio and climate change. So it's really timely, and he wanted to make sure that we got that point across, that that is something that they are going to be highlighting throughout the year across radio as well. So
The whole year.
that's what my understanding is. There's a whole letter that I started to glance through at the beginning of our meeting. So it's really cool, really exciting, and I'm hoping that maybe we can forward this along. Yeah, great. Thank you, Jennifer.
That's terrific, and some of us are old enough to have grown up with radio.
I just need you to send it to us.
Hey, Ronnie, can you send that to Jennifer?
Unless there are any other urgent items, going once, going twice, meeting adjourned.